All right, cool. Hey, y'all. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for the TAK Product Center for inviting us out. This is TAK for public safety, superpowers for a complex world. Screenshot of the FIRUS video from California. This is what we used for doing wildfire mapping in California. I thought it was kind of a neat screenshot there. So who am I? Why am I here? My name is Greg Albrecht. I'm an EMT out in California. I'm also a ham. W2GMD is my call sign. And I'm a technical advisor and team awareness kit, SME, for various agencies at state, local, and federal level. And for those of you that can read Korean, there's a double entendre in that photo. And that was me before the hair on my head switched poles. So public safety, I wanted to clarify what we mean when we're talking about public safety. We don't necessarily just mean police and firefighters. We mean everyone who's involved with keeping you safe. And these are the types of users we've seen operationally, right? Police, fire, medical, utilities, mass transit, public works, power, beach and harbor, and you name it, right? Anyone at a municipal level who has a responsibility for your safety, we consider public safety, and those are the types of users we're trying to speak to with TAK in these operational environments. Here's some true facts about public safety. Almost all public safety is dependent on LTE or 5G. Right? The first thing everyone reaches for is their phone, even the chief, right? Yeah, we all have radios. The radios are a communication device of last resort at this point, right? Everything we're doing, writing tickets, citations, records keeping, everything is happening on a smartphone, right? It might not all be 5G yet, but it's trending towards 5G. And the smartphones are pervasive again, right? The first thing the chief reaches for is a smartphone. So we have to accept that as a fact. It's not going away. Mutual aid is pretty common. A lot of the operations we do in these environments aren't isolated to a single municipality. After COVID, there was a big drop in the force available for public safety agencies. And even before that, a lot of public safety agencies relied on mutual aid, right? The ability to respond across jurisdictions or across boundaries. Most of California is set up this way for fire and for law. So if there's a large enough event in California, most municipal agencies will send task force to respond within the state. And all disasters start local, right? So if you're imagining a large incident, it's gonna start with a 911 call first, right? Local responders are gonna respond first. So when we're thinking about how we're gonna deploy some of this technology, we need to think about the person who's gonna be the very first responder, not the task force that might show up later. They need the same capabilities, but we need to think about the first responder and what they need first, because they're going to be the time delta to saving lives. So I'm going to go through a couple of case studies of how we've utilized TAK for public safety in these different areas. The first, we're going to talk about a major city police department. I'm not going to name names, but you could draw the lines there. It started with their tactical units. Their SWAT teams and their tactical units were turned on to TAK early on, thanks to the folks at FBI who provided them with server access. And they had been using it operationally and for mission planning for a long time, right? Whenever they're gonna go serve a warrant or deal with a risky suspect, all of their mission planning is happening in TAK today, right? This is how they roll it out. Real-time data was actually secondary for those folks. They were using the TAK as a moving map that they could deploy out to all of their units before they got on scene. There was an NSSE, a national security event in the city that necessitated bringing everyone on board. So this went from just being something that tactical units used to expanding out to the specs. So those are your counter snipers and EOD type folks. The Homeland Security units, SID units, high intensity units, everyone started using TAK because of the national security event. And really that was it was a good way of introducing those units to TAK and getting them on board really quickly and having them start adopting it for their everyday use. And today, multiple units across different bureaus are using it operationally every day. And this is everything from street beats all the way up to sting and bust to high interdiction stuff. And it is now the basis for the real-time crime center that they're building out there. So real-time crime centers are a trend among law enforcement agencies, right, where they can centralize all of their data and intelligence collection. And this police department is using ATAK as the basis for their real-time crime center. So all real-time crime data that comes in is now going into TAK, and that's what they're using in their real-time crime center. So this is where they deconflict arrests, high-intensity interdictions, things like that. So imagine the room with all the screens.
What year did that started with?
I don't remember when the tactical units started, but the NSSC was just in the last year, and they've blown up. I mean, figuratively, but it's taken off within the department. So, we deal with a couple unique things where we're at. Organized retail crime is pretty big where we're at. And bonus points if someone knows what the name of that handbag is. No one? No. Low-key hobo. It's a $3,000 handbag. It's real money, right? $3,000 is real money. So the systems they're using are things like these asset protection and recovery systems. You might be familiar with these from bank heists and stuff, the things that you could hide in stacks of money. Well, you enclose that in a little bit of leather and stick it in an expensive handbag, and now you have a way of tracking handbags. So what they'll do is they'll draw a geofence around one of these areas, around one of these stores, and they're able to track and monitor the geofence for this handbag. So instead of relying on some outdated system or some antiquated system, they're now able to do this in TAK. So they're using TAK for their organized retail crime interdictions in the city today. They've also rolled this out for their real-time tracking and historical tracking. So this is one of those tracking devices that you would affix to a vehicle if you're doing suspect tracking or any kind of tracking. It gives them vehicle-mounted GPS, alarms and alerts, and movement indicators. And we can actually replay that data within ATAK. And so, a detective who might be using this data now has that real-time data of where their units are overlaid with historical data from these trackers or real-time data from these trackers. So this is an LTE-based tracker that's just pumping out GPS positions, and we pump that into ITAK for those units. Cellular forensics. So this is the data you might get back from a cell phone company under either exigent or non-exigent purposes. We get CDR data, call data, and real-time pings. So when they're tracking or monitoring someone, we can use the tower data and overlay geofences on the tower data to tell us when there's movement for a phone of interest, or we can use it for analyzing historical data, right? It gives us a single pane of glass to look at that type of data. This is my favorite. This is the baby cam. That's a camera in there, actually a PTZ camera, no less. So they're using this for bait vehicles. We have a big problem with vehicle break-ins and vehicle thefts where we're at. So they're using this today, and they're pumping this into TAK. So not only are they able to see where the bait vehicle is at, they can pull up a live video feed from inside the vehicle and overlay that in TAK. So the operators who are out there, these are usually UC folks, plainclothes folks. They're able to pull up that data in real time on their phones, because mostly that's what they're carrying anyway, right? Like I said before, radios are secondary for those types of users. Another case study, Baker to Vegas. This is a 120-mile foot race through the California desert from Baker, California to Las Vegas, as the name implies. Most of that is denied connectivity. There's no LTE out there. Verizon rolls out these, they call them spots. It's like a cow or colt, if you're familiar with that terminology. They'll roll out about 26 of these along, not 26, 20 of these along the race path. And they're using TAK. They're using TAK to track the medical support and logistics users, as well as they often have to do medevacs out there. They pull in the ADSB data as well. So this was the second year they've run the entire race on TAK from Baker all the way to Vegas. 9,000 people, 6,000 runners, all law enforcement. So it's a law enforcement benefiting race. So Verizon's rolling this out today with our support. Corona Fire Department, AJ was just up here talking. These are some of the integrations we've done for Corona. California used to have a statewide AVL for all mutual aid fire apparatus. They've since moved that into other systems, but we were able to pull that in from that AVL. We use PulsePoint for their CAD. PulsePoint is an aggregator for CAD data from departments. Typically, on a civilian level, it's used for civilian responders to be able to respond when there's an MI or a need for an AED. It gives you that real-time data from the departments. We actually pump that through into AJ's team's ATAK, both on TAKServer and CivTAK. And they've recently moved to a system called Tablet Command, which is popular at least in the western states for fire response. And we now use that to pull in their AVL data as well. So we get real-time alarm data, call data, incident information, case information, which units are responding, and we can overlay that with the real-time location of both the apparatus themselves as well as the individual user. So, a dismounted user who might have a smartphone on them. We merge that all into a TAK interface for them. This was a music festival we did a couple years ago. We tied in their incident management system into TAK, and we're able to actually use TAK chat as a way of updating real-time call status information for those users. The benefit here was typically in these environments, you're doing a lot of back and forth on the radio to describe the location of calls. And because we're able to geolocate those calls on the map and provide real-time call information, our units could just vector right towards the calls, right? No more back and forth. Which tree are you standing by? How many yards away from the fence are you? Just look on the map, vector right towards the call. My favorite part about this was when I heard a dispatcher tell someone that they were walking in the wrong direction, which, that's time saved, which is lives saved, right? We also use this to build a Google Sheets-based unit status dashboard. So they run multiple ALS field hospitals there, and we kept real-time data on the field hospitals as well as which units were responding based on the data we got from TAK. So when a unit was responding, they could punch themselves, en route, on scene, cleared, UTL, and we could pump that through to it was a simple spreadsheet, but it worked, right? It provided a unit dashboard. The other thing that came up was we had a critical incident where a 911 call came in for a CPR in progress, and I'll hint, it's always a CPR in progress, but whatever. It was a CPR in progress. We couldn't find it, and the problem was the 911 dispatcher knew where the call was at. Our units did not. So very quickly, we turned around an integration with a system called Rapid SOS, which provides real-time call information from 911 callers, and we're able to pump that out into TAK. Again, no more having to guess where the call was coming from or no more back and forth on the radio. We could vector the medical units right to that call. We worked on this with COTAK. There's Brad over there. And the Forest Service folks, their use case, and Brad, feel free to correct me on this, but this is what I remember. They were out doing fuels control, flying helicopters low and slow. Occasionally they would stall and crash in the area where they were just starting a fire, which is an unfortunate convergence of effects. And they needed a way of tracking their units when they were out there, right? So we built a standalone ADSB to TAK gateway that they could bring with them. If you stop by the COTAK booth, they actually have one over there. But this is just a field deployable ADSB to TAK gateway, no internet required. All you need is your TAK EUD, ATAK, WinTAK, ITAK, whatever you've got, and this working off 5-volt USB, and you've got a local ADSB gateway for your users to use. And we actually sell this as a kit. It's also open source, so if you want to roll your own, you can roll your own as well. And we know this is in use operationally today. That's actual from a fire up in Klamath a couple years ago. They deployed it out with some of their teams. Cal OES will now put this up whenever they put up a repeater. So when they put up a repeater on a high site, they'll deploy the AirTAK out there with it. The benefit there is there's a lot of valleys in California, right? There's not, a lot of those ADSB aggregator websites don't have coverage in some of those areas. And if those areas are out of power, if we're fighting a fire down in a valley, there's no coverage there at all. Now they can deploy these as forward sensors, get that operational data. It's important because if someone's about to drop a swimming pool, full of water on your position, you probably want to get the hell out of there, right? It's a good thing to know, and it's been a tragedy in the past. So it's good that they're able to deploy this now. We did this for Hurricane Ida a couple years ago. ITDRC is a nonprofit disaster technology resource group. If you've ever worked with the Red Cross or any other disaster response agencies, there's the field responders, and then there's a lot of administrative work, right? A lot of IT, a lot of networking, a lot of technology that's required in a disaster. ITDRC is an organization that provides that as a nonprofit. They also have their own fleet, and they track a lot of their resources using Salesforce. So we were able to build an integration. It might be hard to see on the screen here. I'll walk over and point it out, but these dots you see on the screen are all shelter locations or resource locations that popped up after Hurricane Ida. They put those into Salesforce. That's what they use to track those things. We extract that data from Salesforce and actually push it out to the responders on the edge so they're able to see it on TAK in real time. Additionally, they use Fleet Complete for a lot of their AVL, so tracking their vehicles and tracking their trailers. we were able to pull that location information in as well. So it gave them the complete picture of their disaster response cycle. They didn't have anything like this before, right? It was text messages and hand-drawn maps or Google Maps, right? So there's really changed. They've deployed this completely operationally now within ITDRC, but this was their first foray into TAK. I'm not used to this thin Colorado air. All right, the big one. Multi-week music festival. So this is a multi-week music festival out in the California desert. It takes about 2 months to set up and 2 months to tear down. It's 3 weekends long. First 2 weekends are pop and electronic music. Last weekend is country music. You could put the pieces together and figure out what I'm talking about. This is actually a live picture from the event. It was a fun event. So how it started. We were approached by the event promoter who wanted to do asset and unit tracking. Right, so they wanted to track their EMS units, their fire units, and their safety units. Safety units are like, think OSHA safety type units, right? Make sure the stage is safe, make sure the fire lanes are open, things like that. They're using an incident management system similar to a CAD, if you're familiar with a CAD, but for an incident. They wanted to pull that information into TAK as well. Our coverage area was about 2 square miles in the desert, and this is a mixture of city plus just open polo field desert. Total attendees was about 3,500 people across 3 weekends, and their operational cadence is a 24-hour, 5-day cadence per weekend. So Thursday through Sunday is 24-hour op, 2 days off, 12-hour op, switches back to a 24-hour op. So they were running 24/7, 5 days a week for an entire month, for 3 weeks of that month. And they were using TAK the entire time. So this is how it started. This was the initial ask. Where we ended up was adoption grew to more than 100 daily active users, right? I onboarded a considerable amount of users myself. The nice thing is when you get a savvy enough team, they'll onboard themselves at some point, which is pretty sweet. We were approached by the fire chief out there asking if we could use TAK to track unit status. So it's one thing to be able to dispatch calls and have a unit respond to a call, but keeping track of your unit status, right? What units are available, what units are on scene. We threw together a quick dashboard based off of the TAK data that we were getting, and we were able to provide that to the dispatch folks so they can actually track their units in real time. Normally, this would be something that we handled at a municipal level by the CAD itself, but again, this is a stand-up event where they're rolling out an incident management system. We had initially tried to roll out Meshtastic, but we had a lot of hardware problems. I'll say this, I'm sure Meshtastic is great for some use cases, but I would not use it operationally for personnel. It failed on us there, and we had to revert back to cell phones. And in hindsight, we probably should have used cell phones to begin with. Credit to Verizon's crisis response team. They were able to supplement our Meshtastic devices with phones until we were able to backfill with phones. And I'll say phones worked fine. You know, it's a ton of people out there, but phones work fine. We're not passing big data. We're passing small burst data over LTE and 5G. It was fine for our environment. And the feedback we got was incredible, right? Like, why didn't we, how come this is only the first year we're using this? I'm like, I don't know, you guys could have called me sooner. And, there was a critical incident and someone said, everyone needs to be on TAK all the time, always. Right, and it started with those medical teams and fire teams and expanded to security, perimeter, fencing, sanitary, public works, right? All of the users are now on the map. A fun one that came out of this was the festival footprint is so big that there is an internal employee shuttle. So think like a golf cart with extra seats to get around the venue, right? I'm a GS0 when I'm there, right? So I don't get a golf cart. I have to wait for the shuttle. And it's hot in the desert, so you're waiting for the shuttle in the heat. And the number one thing you ask yourself is like, where's the stupid shuttle? When is the shuttle gonna get here? So I went back and I complained to my CEO there, and he's like, why don't we build a TAK integration for the shuttle? So very quickly what we put together was each of the shuttle stops have this sign, right, to indicate what shuttle stop you're at, and there's a map of the shuttle. So we equipped all of the shuttle buses with TAK trackers, and they put together a quick public-facing web page that was linkable by a QR code. So we went back to all of these shuttle stops and we pasted a QR code up there so that next time a schmuck like me is waiting for the shuttle, I could scan the QR code and get a real-time TAK map of where the shuttle was at and its estimated arrival at that stop. So I no longer had to wait in the sweltering California desert. I could find shade until I knew the shuttle was coming, or I could start walking if the shuttle wasn't coming. And we put that together on the spot while we were there, and it was necessity, right? Like, you don't want to wait out in the heat. But that was a really interesting integration that came out of that environment. One question we got asked a lot was, a lot of the estimates about cell phone coverage out there were based off of good vibes. There were cows and colts and open RANs and microcells and picocells and femtocells deployed all over the place. But for the most part, when we're operating in those environments, the only way we know if someone's connected or disconnected is the red dot on TAK, which isn't enough. So this is almost my call to arms for us to say, hey, we need a better way of determining where and when we're getting good coverage. Because the question I got asked is, well, if there's no good coverage, where should we put our ambulances? Right? If we're staging ambulances and we're staging them in a dark zone where there's no LTE coverage, that kind of sucks. But I had really no way of quantifying where the best place was to place our units. So I'm asking, the community, let's try to solve for this, right? Your phones have the ability to collect this telemetry. Let's start utilizing this within TAK to not just tell us that we're connected or disconnected, but actually help us placing our units strategically in those environments. And this is just an example of what Cell Mapper does, right? It'll show you your LTE coverage for a particular area. It would be helpful in those environments for us to be able to utilize that to strategically place our medical units. All right, some other TAK integrations that we've done. So out of the festival deployment, if you've ever, I don't know how universal this is, but a lot of shopping centers are now deploying these standalone surveillance wagons. So it's usually a solar-powered light tower, but with cameras installed on it. So one of the asks we got for another festival was, hey, we're going to deploy these. Can we actually pull those into TAK as well? So this is one of those standalone solar-powered camera towers that we're getting the position of and streaming the videos back into TAK. So a user who pulls this up on their TAK map can actually see all of the cameras, see their field of view, see their bearing, and punch that up into TAK and view that in real time. So this is something we're looking forward to deploying at the next set of festivals next year for all of their different light towers and camera towers. The trend of drones from nuisance to threat is sort of a line that's hard to follow. So one of the areas we've gotten asked about is the ability to do drone detection or counter UAS detection. So this is a system we built to do remote ID to TAK. So you can deploy this as a hand portable device or as here you can see it at a different festival as a fixed sensor at a high site that will show us all of the remote ID compliant drones that are flying in an environment. So this can either be used as a security device to show you drones in an area, or a deconfliction device if you're running your own drone operations, right? This talks directly to TAK. It sees all drone remote ID compliant devices, so all your DJIs, all your Parrots, things of that nature, and pumps it right into TAK. You can have this talk directly to an EUD, or you could pump it up to a TAKServer. So this is our counter UAS device. The ARIA all-in-one is our all-in-one device. So this is both an ADSB, AIS, and remote ID receiver device. I have one up here. But this sort of glues together all those different capabilities, right? So if you're in an environment where you just need to be able to collect all sources into TAK, this is a portable battery-powered device that'll pump that data out to you. Again, it'll operate standalone, or you can tie this into a TAKServer and share this out to all your users. We've been able to do this because we've created a couple rapid TAK integration software packages. The first is called PyTAK. So this is a Python package that lets you rapidly integrate with TAK. It comes with some example scripts, and most of the integrations you've seen were based off one of these two backends. PyTAK is for Python-based integrations, and Node-RED is a really good flow-based way of integrating with TAK. I bring Node-RED wherever I go. I'm leaving from this tonight, going to Milwaukee for the thing in Milwaukee, and we will be using it there for rapid integrations in Milwaukee. You could run that on everything from a smartphone to a Raspberry Pi to a laptop. But if you're dealing with different data formats, pumping data in and out, or again, if you need to build a quick dashboard for the chief, Node-RED's the way to go for that. And these are both open source, Apache licensed, go nuts. We've also built an operating system that sort of glues a lot of this together, which we're making available for anyone to use. It currently only runs on ARM64 based processors, but we have a x86 version coming out soon based on Ansible. But ARIA OS is just an OS that ties together all of these rapid integration capabilities, ADSB, AIS, remote ID, all of these capabilities are tied into the operating system. Again, it's open source, Apache licensed. You can fork it and go nuts. Of course, pull requests are welcome. Some future considerations. Drone first responder, DFR, is an emerging technology that most departments in the US are rolling out. This is the ability to sortie a drone to get on station for a 911 call rapidly. So if you can imagine, again, we're constrained by how many officers we have, right? And even within that, there's a lot of calls to respond to. So if we can get a drone on scene and get eyes on the incident quickly, that can help us determine what kind of resources we need to send or what kind of threat or what kind of incident we're dealing with. And that's rolling out everywhere, right? Departments all over the country are rolling that out. So integrating that into TAK is a future consideration that we should take on as a community. ALPRs, automatic license plate readers, Flock and other systems like that are being rolled out in a lot of communities and being used for a lot of, theft is real. People steal stuff all the time. Crime is real. Being able to correlate that information in real time with our detectives and our agents is very helpful. Gunshot detection systems like ShotSpotter. Alarms and indicators from different alarm systems, CCTV systems, and body-worn cameras, right? A lot of departments, especially at a federal level, there's a executive order that all law enforcement agencies need to start rolling out BWCs. So being able to tie that into TAK, right, and actually see what the operator is seeing in real time back at our RTIC or at a command post is helpful in those environments. And then some final thoughts on this. All cops are criminals. Every common operating picture that is trying to sell you something is trying to steal your data, right? So think about it. With TAK, we've established the de facto standard for situational awareness and public safety. If someone's trying to sell that data back to you, they're stealing your data, right? So anyone who's giving you the promise of a common operating picture that isn't based on TAK is stealing from you. They're taking your data and they're selling it back to you. And it's free, right? The only cost for TAK is your time. And the benefit there is you get all of AFRL for free, right? All of the developments that come out of AFRL, you get when you adopt TAK. And, don't wait for the tragedy to happen for you to start deploying TAK, right? You don't want that to be the afterthought. You don't want to say, oh man, if only we had deployed TAK, right? Start thinking about it today and start pushing your vendors to integrate with TAK today. Because today might not be the day that you need it, but next week, the president's gonna play golf in your backyard, or there's a disaster in your backyard, or you have some other incident where you need to interoperate with other agencies. TAK can be your baseline and interoperability standard for situational awareness. And I'll leave you guys with that, and I'm happy to take questions. Or no questions. Corey, you have a question? Oh, okay. All right. Oh, where do I see that? Okay, I guess there are none. Well, I guess I blew you away. Well, thank you for coming. That's all I got. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's the person at the edge who knows what they need. So it's nice being able to work with, I'm a medic myself, but it's nice being able to work with AJ and Corey and all the other people who are actually practitioners, because we know, we're out there at the edge, right? We're the ones responding and we know what it is that we need. And being able to adopt that rapidly would only be possible with TAK, right? That has made it really easy for us. I mean, look at this map, right? This is nuts, right? And this is where I live. Right? And this is just a normal day. There's nothing special happening on this day. It's a complex environment. So if you can imagine responding in that, we've got Coast Guard flying there, we've got drones up, We've got flights out of Travis. We've got commercial flights. There's a half a dozen TFRs, right? There's traffic cameras everywhere. Like there's a lot of complexity there. If I need access to any of that, I now have it, right? I don't need to jump through a bunch of different systems to get access to that data. And a thing I like to tell people when we're pitching TAK to public safety agencies is if you're looking at a map, you should be looking at TAK. And if you're looking at two maps, you're looking at too many maps, right? Standardize and normalize TAK, right? Deploy TAK as your operating environment. There's a learning curve, obviously, with any tool, but once you've done that, it's really easy to start pulling in other systems, and the technical barrier to entry is pretty low, right? You could do a lot without learning any programming. You could do a lot on a smartphone by itself with TAK. So start exploring it, if you're curious. Don't wait till afterwards. Yes, Corey, go ahead.
All right, so you have a question. You are one of the people who has access to lots of agencies, very disparate groups using TAK. You've onboarded many different types of agencies and all that other stuff. What is probably some of your biggest lessons across multiple agencies and multiple jurisdictions and multiple types of
Yes. BYOD is a pain in the butt sometimes. Bring your own device is a pain in the butt. I know iOS is supposed to be the same everywhere. I have seen so many weird, you too, right? There's so many. The question was like, what are the things I've seen or what are some lessons learned? Patience, obviously, right? And it sounds weird, but like sometimes restarting the phone is what you have to do. The number of times that has solved problems, I swear. Sometimes reinstalling ATAK is what you have to do. Like it sounds weird, but it's iOS, right? The other is there's this desire to build big old data packages that have all your maps and all that stuff in there. But I'll tell you what, like when you're standing in 110-degree heat in the desert onboarding 60 people who have never heard of TAK before, you don't want to have them all downloading 60 meg, MB tile or 60 meg. It's impractical. It's dumb. Tile servers are the way to go, right? If you can afford a tile server, if you can stand up a tile server, that is the way to go, especially if you know you're going to have somewhat reliable internet coverage. Downloading data packages, especially on the fly, especially when you're onboarding a bunch of people, is impractical and it sucks. There's other lessons from that. If people have company-provided devices or agency-provided devices, you're going to need to link up with their IT folks ahead of time, right? Doing that in the field, you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to push the application out to those users. You're going to need to link up with their IT folks ahead of time. A lot of the times we'll just bring our own phones. We'll bring burner phones or handout phones because it's just easier than trying to futz with someone's phone, right? The other thing is I don't really want to touch someone's phone because then you're liable for whatever happens to their phone. So if you're doing these types of deployments, just get a cache of phones. I'll give credit to Verizon's VCRT, their critical response team. They will bring you whatever you want, and you don't have to be a Verizon customer. So if you're doing a public safety operation and you need 20 phones, 3 cradle points, a couple MiFis, you call Verizon, they're there. They will either overnight it or they will send someone to help you deploy it. And I've had them do everything from run cable and gaff tape it down to program radios to set up cell phones. I can't speak for the other public safety cellular carriers and their ability to do that, but it has helped us a lot, Verizon coming out doing those things for us. Cool. Yes, Charles, go ahead.
What's your favorite integration so far?
APRS. So like I said, I'm also a ham. Hams have a system called APRS, Automatic Packet Reporting System. It actually came out of the Naval Academy. Bob Barunga was the guy who created it. So it's kind of a precursor for TAK, if you will, in the amateur community. But hams use it for everything, not just tracking, but they'll put sensors on there. There's some radiological sensors that folks have put on there. I think after Fukushima, I used a lot of the APRS rad sensors to collect data along the coast of California. When people were protesting, just as a side note, when people were protesting the Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor when it was going in, hams built out a nuclear sensing network using UHF APRS to collect the rad sensor data and pull that in. So that is a good open source for meteorological data, sensor data, positioning data. And it's pretty trivial to pull it in. You could do it over the air like you would AIS or ADSB, or there's internet aggregators for that data as well. And especially if you're doing public service events, hams love operating in that, and that's one of the pillars of amateur radio. Hams are using TAK today as well, right? I've used it when I work as a ham, right? We've used it operationally for the marathons and the walkathons and things that we support because it does everything for us. It has all of the same ways we use it in public safety and defense. Hams use it for public service as well. So there's my pitch for ham radio if you haven't gotten your license. Cool. Well, I'll be around if anyone needs anything. Feel free to grab me. I have some swag as well. But yeah, thanks for coming.